Hi guys! In Russia, the idea is traditionally very popular that it's necessary to leave the country for more developed countries in which the standard of living is much higher. The logic is quite clear. The quality of life in many countries is higher, and people are often in search of a better one. The idea of immigration has become especially popular since the time of the Iron Curtain. As a result of a ban on leaving the USSR, the topic of immigration has become especially sacred. In the past 30 years, the borders have opened, but the topic of immigration remains surprisingly sacred. Many consider immigration to be an end in itself, regardless of a complex of the other factors. Let's see if it is necessary to leave Russia for more developed countries. Let's start with the arguments that people who want to leave Russia for more developed countries say. The first, the level of income. On average, salaries in developed Western countries are much higher than in Russia. Even adjusted for price differences and tax rates, the average person in the West can lead a quite comfortable existence. Comfort at work. In the West, you are more likely to have a balanced work schedule, more free time, better organized work process, less stress at work. Professional experience. Work experience in developed countries is often valued higher than work experience in Russia. Having worked in a developed country, you will have more opportunities to see such experience, both in the West and in Russia. Moreover, even if you want to be useful in Russia, a certain number of years of work or study in a developed country will allow you to gain new skills and expertise and upon returning be more useful in Russia. Quality of people and life. Despite the fact that the level of culture in Russia has been increasing in recent years, on average in the West it is still remained higher. People are more decent and friendly. It is more pleasant to live surrounded by such people. In addition, the climate, ecology, food quality, conditions for children, social protection in the West are much better than in Russia. Political risks. Political risks associated with Russia are higher. Now, because of the situation around Ukraine, it's not at all clear what will happen next. No Brexit, the victory of right-wing parties in Europe, the problem of refugees, the crisis of capitalism. Most likely don't care the same political risk for Western countries as the risk in Russia. Legal risks. In Russia, it is quite possible to get a criminal sentence for nothing. A business may be faced with an out-of-court blocking its accounts, resulting in little left of the business. In the West, there are incomparably fewer such legal risks. Expansion of the world view. Any new culture experience is useful for a better understanding of various issues. People with low international experience tend to have more limited world view. The experience of living in another country is almost always an opportunity to look at many things from a different angle, to see how people in countries solve certain problems. Moreover, in the West, on average, there are more interesting people. It is really interesting to communicate with them, and you can learn a lot of new and interesting things. Life expectancy. It's hard to single out an obvious reason, but life expectancy in the West remains incomparably higher. The reasons are not completely obviously. Ecology, nutrition and food quality, lifestyle, climate, stress, medicine. However, it looks like if you live in the West, your chance of living a long life are better. But how it really works? The level of income in Russia is far from low for everyone. The average level of wages in Russia is definitely lower than in the West. But this is only on paper. But if measured by purchasing power parity, how many goods and services you can buy for an average salary after taxes in different countries, the situation no longer looks so bad, and in many respects Russia is not only on the same level with the countries of the West, but in many respects surprises them. For example, utility bills, gasoline, catering, the cost of cellular communication and the internet, or a haircut at a hairdresser in Russia is several times cheaper than in Europe or the USA. And it turns out that lower salaries are offset by lower prices within the country. And add to this free medicine, completely free school education, very cheap cost of kindergartens, an average no more than $100 per month, which is also an order of magnitude higher than the average American kindergarten. The situation looks completely different. For example, if you have highly quality job in Moscow, or if you are successful entrepreneur, then in terms of finance, you will definitely not benefit from moving to the West. In these segments, Russia has a higher income, adjusted for taxes and price levels, than in the West. As for Moscow itself, it may come as a surprise to many, but in terms of infrastructure, comfort for life, and the standard of living in general, Moscow is one of the leaders in international ratings. In the West, Russian experience is not valid. You could be a very successful professional in Russia, but in the West, not likely you will be higher with a significant downgrade. The West does not value experience and, above all, higher education received in Russia, and after all, mostly educated people go, but they do low-skilled work. The difference is that in Russia you can be a top manager in an average company and earn as a waiter in the USA. But you must admire that this is a very big step down in development. Moreover, according to purchasing power parity, a top manager in Russia lives on the salary much more comfortable than a waiter in the USA, especially with American prices for everything. It is difficult to become one's own. The ideology of Western countries claims equality, tolerance, but in fact, almost everywhere preference is given to their own citizens in general. It is logical. In all countries they do this. If you work, for example, in the USA, no matter how good you are, ceteris paribus, when promotion, the advantage will be given to your own citizens. This can be justified by a more understandable mentality and knowledge of language. In a sense, it's very difficult to achieve significant success and become a big man in country other than your own. Moreover, now in many Western countries, this is a rather negative attitude towards Russia in connection with the last events in the world. Western countries are very different, however. In general, most Western countries are quite boring. These are either small countries with small towns that have a very high standard of living and comfort, but where little happens. For example, Switzerland, Austria, New Zealand, or larger countries that are culturally quite closer to foreigners. It's one thing to have nice European you meet on your tourist trips to Europe. It's another thing to live as immigrant. There are a couple of countries that are quite interesting for life. This is first of all Great Britain, Canada and the USA, in which there is a large promotion of skilled migrants. In the rest, it can be quite boring. In many ways, Russia has gone for a herd of developed countries. An illustrative example, in many Europe countries, cars are still far from being accepted for payment everywhere. In Russia, this is hard to imagine. In Russia, the cards themselves are not very popular because basically everyone uses contactless payment system via a smartphone using NFC technology. Before it was Apple Pay and Google Pay. Now it is Mir's own payment system. That is why, in a sense, Russia is even more comfortable for life than Western countries. For example, in terms of customs service, for example, service in restaurants and other daily services. Many people in Russia don't like the general political line, but in general, in the modern world, this is considered normal, including in Russia. And no one will touch you for your political views if you don't organize illegal rallies and don't call for violence. Everyone understands that there is no ideal political system anywhere. For example, if you go to an uncoordinated rally near the White House in Washington, then you will have no less problems than at a rally in Moscow. Russian and Western people represent very different cultures. Western people are mentally very different from Russians, and even the most advanced Russians can have difficulty adapting. Moving to the West is very difficult for us. Getting an offer and a work permit is a huge effort. The question to be answered is whatever such a goal as moving west is worth the titanic effort that may be required. By the way, in Russia there is such a saying, where he was born, there and came in handy. In general, there is no one answer, whatever it is necessary to leave Russia. There are very strong arguments, both for and against. Moving to the West should not be an end in itself. You should look at situation. What do you now have in Russia and what is offered to you in the West? Russia is not so bad now. On the other hand, the desire to improve their conditions is always justified. If you live in Europe, it is not at all difficult. For example, to regularly see your parents living in Russia and vice versa. In general, there is no simple answer. You always have to talk depending on the specific situation. There is no longer any special sacredness in the topic of moving to Western countries. You need to pragmatically evaluate the options. So guys, if you like this video, like it, subscribe to my channel. See you soon. Bye bye.